The mountain as metaphor looms large in the lives of marginalized people, people whose bones get crushed in the grind of capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy. From the first line of Eli Clare's Exile and Pride, I was hooked. Seriously, as a liberal bisexual woman who grew up in an extremely privileged and conservative town, reading a line like that in a book for school was just incredible. I chose to review this book for two reasons. First, like Claire, I am a member of the LGBT community. I was really excited to analyze a piece of work written by a queer person in an academic setting. But second, I knew going in that Claire was disabled, and disability is a topic that I have little to no experience with. I wanted to learn more. Luckily, this book more than delivered on both accounts. In Exile and Pride, Eli Clare discusses the idea of home in terms of both a place and a body. He first talks about his experiences in his hometown, which is where I hold one of my only criticisms of his work. He describes his internal conflict between his connection to his hometown and his found community and identity through a metaphor about logging. While he is morally opposed to logging and environmental destruction, he still holds a sort of nostalgia for it because he grew up with it. I think the metaphor is incredibly effective, and I think it demonstrates his feelings well. But I think he drags the section on a little too long. I could have understood his point in 5, maybe 10 pages, instead of almost 50. I noticed this problem in later sections too, but maybe because I was more excited about the topics, it didn't bother me as much. But Clare's language more than makes up for this. He uses beautiful imagery and narrative descriptions to paint stories and pictures in the reader's minds. In later sections, he talks about freak shows from the past and how this relates to the way disabled people are treated today. But he doesn't just talk about the issues. He puts you right in the shoes of the marginalized. The narrative, descriptive, almost stream of consciousness style of writing he uses might bother some people, but I thought it was incredibly effective. His writing is emotional. You can tell he's passionate, and it makes the readers, or at least me as a reader, feel passionate too. Damn right you better look. Look long and hard. Watch my crooked hobble, my twitching body, my withered legs. Listen to my hands sign a language you don't even know. Notice my milky eyes I no longer hide behind sunglasses. Look at me straight on, because for all your years of gawking, you've still not seen me. I mean. Okay, fine, the guy can write, but that doesn't necessarily mean his argument is sound. Luckily, the ideas in his writing are just as complex and well thought out as the words he uses. His discussion of the LGBT community echoes and builds on a lot of my own experiences. I've never been able to quite put into words what exactly reclaiming insults and slurs means to me. I've heard gay used as an insult more times than I can count, and Claire helped me understand that when I reclaim it for myself, I'm using it as a source of pride. I'm taking what others have done to me and loving myself in spite of it. The majority of the book, however, touches on disability. His writing made me consider things I'd never thought about before, like the sexuality of disabled people and how this is stolen from them. Claire describes that sexual liberation is found in different ways for different people. We must consider more than just white, cis, middle-class women. So a disabled woman posing for Playboy is, in many ways, freeing and transformative in ways it isn't for non-disabled women. The crux of Claire's argument is that disabled voices need to be heard, and the discussion of disability ought to be centered around ableism, not the disabilities themselves. He uses the example of freak shows where disabled people and people of color were put on display to entertain others. What I thought was most interesting and surprising was that, while Claire of course considers freak shows exploitative results of racism and ableism, he also suggests that it was, for some, liberating in some ways. He asks readers to compare the way disabled people are treated now versus how they were treated then, and similarities we can draw between the two. His discussion of disability also centers around his idea of home, and how he has found home in both Exile and Pride. In some ways, Claire discusses pride as a result of exile. He describes pride as something that encourages anger, strength, and joy, something that can be an act of resistance. A lot of his arguments use personal anecdotes. Some people might think this is a problem, but I don't really think it is. It makes his argument more emotional, more personal, and most importantly, more believable. I know this might make him seem less credible, but in my opinion, he uses enough factual evidence that his argument isn't invalidated at all. One thing I really appreciate in the book is the way Claire describes his experiences as a disabled person in comparison to his experiences as a queer person. As a member of the LGBT community myself, it allowed me to understand his experiences in a more personal way. In saying that, however, I recognize that not everyone who reads this will be part of a marginalized group, and this may cause some disconnect or alienation between the book and readers. But I still highly, highly recommend this book. especially to people who want to learn more about disability, queerness, and identity.